Not much time. Hang on, kid. I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
This is Rogue 2. Captain Solo, Echo Base. This is Rogue 2. I found them. Repeat, I found them.
Fade in.
This is where the fun begins. Hello there.
Crap. 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 Crap.
You know, hey! You guys sure are friendly, aren't you?
I'll probably never meet him.
Might. Something different about him.
Had enough?
What do you want? I'm busy.
No, we have a race.
No. There's nothing special about you. You're nothing.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Well, what's that then?
I've had worse.
You liar!
Come on, you pansy.
Victory is mine!
Just a flesh wound.
You will each be part of me, and together we will be complete.
Use the Force. Let go.
The Force is strong in this one.
Cocainum.
I have you now. What?
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
He saved us. He really did it. May the Force be with us.
Ready program! Together, we have achieved a great many things.
I am Boba Fett. Follow me, friend.
disintegrations.
As you wish.
Greetings, programs. Welcome to the Not My Star Wars live stream. What Star Wars means to us with Mark Anthony Austin of Star Wars: A New Hope, the special edition. Glad to see you guys here. What a wonderful Sunday. We will be spending it with someone that was in Star Wars, someone that loves Star Wars very much like we and I do. We're going to have a great time today. I have Mark for a little bit over an hour, so I will try to look at the chat, but I'm going to try to focus mostly on this conversation with him. We're going to have a great time. Let me give you a little background, and we will bring in Mark. Just 1 second. After earning his Bachelor of Arts degree from West Surrey College of Art and Design in Surrey, England, Mark went on to make the filmed animated short Father that would later be nominated for a BAFTA and eventually win numerous awards. Soon after, Mark started his career in earnest at the Wyatt Cataneo Animation Studio in London, overseeing the commercial campaigns of the company's largest European brand names, including Tetley Teabags, Rabena, and the Swiss Bank Corporation. In 1993, Mark moved to Lucasfilm's Industrial Light and Magic to work on Steven Spielberg's Casper, and then given charge of the creative animation for the first Star Wars special edition. Mark soon moved on to Walt Disney Feature Animation as a supervising animator on such projects as Dinosaur, Treasure Planet, Disney World's 3D attraction Mickey's Philharmonic, followed by Chicken Little and then Bolt. Mark has worked in the film industry for decades under various disciplines, including pre-visualization, visualization, post-visualization, artist and supervisor, actor, producer, and animator. Some of Mark's projects include, but are not limited to, Meet the Robinsons, Cruella, The One and Only Ivan, The Call of the Wild, Noelle, Men in Black International, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, Pokemon, Detective Pikachu, Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween, The Predator, Ready Player One, Max Steel, Star Trek Beyond, The Jungle Book, Goosebumps, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Edge of Tomorrow, X-Men Days of Future Past, 300, Rise of an Empire, Thor the Dark World, Jack the Giant Slayer, Oz the Great and Powerful, Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem 3D, The Avengers, Battleship, The Smurfs, G-Force, and most importantly, he worked on Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope Special Edition, as both a computer graphics artist and most importantly, as Boba Fett. Please welcome my guest, a very talented man and a fellow Star Wars fan, my favorite character in the world, Boba Fett, Mark Anthony Austin. Mark, pleasure to have you.
What an introduction.
There you go.
Like somebody else, aren't you?
Glad to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. There's a couple of mistakes you made, though.
Oh, talk to me. What was there? I went off your IMDb, so talk to me.
Yeah. It's Mickey's Philharmagic was the 3D attraction.
Oh, okay.
And there's a couple of others, but it's minor.
Like the spelling stuff, not so much. The proper credits, though?
Just some of the pronunciations, like in England, is White Catania was the studio. It was a
okay.
Studio.
Okay.
And Ribena was it was a drink that was very popular in England, and I'm surprised it didn't make it to the States. I say I'm surprised, but then when I did a commercial for the States, we weren't allowed to air it because in the commercial they claimed to have more vitamin C than oranges, and so the Florida orange groves jumped on it and banned it before it ever aired. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it kind of killed Ribena in America, but it was such a great drink because it forced your kids to drink water because you put a bit of the cordial in and fill up with water. So this much water, this much cordial. But here it's just all sugar. You know? Right.
Well, I do a lot of sugar here too. And my family is Latin, so Ravenna is like it comes out, in that way.
Okay.
But I wasn't even thinking of, So I was looking through your bio. I assume you were born in England?
Yeah. I was born in East London.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to ask you, before we get into the Star Wars stuff, like what got you into film and animation? How did you start? I know in your bio there it kind of says it, but if you could give us just a brief, like where your interest came from, how you kind of got into the industry.
Well, I never dreamed of being in this industry when I was a kid, because I lived in east of London. It was called Essex, a county next to London, and only people in Hollywood got to be in films or got to work on films. I didn't realize there was even a British film industry, because all the movies I watched as a kid were American. My brother was incapable of playing games with me as a child because he'd always put on this American accent. I'm like, we're playing the British troops in the trenches, Aaron. Come on. You don't need to do an American accent. And he would start with a British but slip into his American, just couldn't not do an American accent when we were playing games, because we were influenced so heavily by films. So I never dreamt I would ever end up in this industry, and I went to college to be an illustrator, like children's books. I figured that's what I was going to do, and I did my not my degree. This was before that. This was my diploma. I did a diploma in order to get into college, and they said you should do a general art course, because if you do a general art course, you try different disciplines. You find out if illustration is truly your niche.
Right.
So I did an accelerated. It was a 2-year course. I managed to convince them I could do it in one, because I didn't want to do 2 years and then 3 years for a degree. So I did my 1 year, and at the end of it, I got passed and everything, and was going through the process of applying to colleges. And so tutor was saying, "So, what do you aspire? You still want to be an illustrator, correct?" And I said, "Well, I was really hoping that we would do some animation." She was like, "We don't do animation. We don't do that here. We've got no one qualified to teach you animation here." I said, "Oh, that's a shame." She was like, "Why we said this on the last day? The last day of college. Everything's done. You can't say that now." So she said, "The best I can do is advise you to do some storyboards, and then you can apply to." There was 2 colleges that did a degree course in animation, and one was more technical, computers. One was more traditional. I said, "Well, I'm more traditional. I'm a drawing guy." So I did a couple of storyboards and sent them to the college, and I had an interview and was in a degree course of animation. But it was all like last minute. It was all last minute, and I didn't expect to even. I didn't expect to end up in America at all. I fully expected to just be working in England, and I was working in commercials, like I said, doing animated commercials, and it was really enjoyable. I didn't want to leave the company. I thought I was going to be retiring from that company, but the company, the owners were in their 60s. They wanted to retire. They wanted to sell the company, and so they closed shop in 1993, and I was out of a job. And so luckily my friend, who was the editor at that same company, huge ILM fan, huge. Like, he would buy a movie if ILM used to do the opening credits.
Mm-hmm.
That's how big a fan he was. He collected every movie ILM had anything to do with.
Nice.
He went to see a Jurassic Park lecture. Jurassic Park recently hit a box office smash. He went to see a lecture of them talking about how they did the dinosaur computer effects, or the animation and special effects for that movie. So he calls me really late after he'd been to this lecture, and he was at some bar or in a hotel. He said, "I'm at the hotel with the guys that did the lecture." "Oh, that's cool. Dream come true for you, Steve." He said, "Yeah, well, the reason I'm calling is because they're looking for animators."
Wow.
Well, I don't know the first thing about computers. I don't own one. You know, I've seen my friends play with a Commodore 64. That's about it. So he said, "Well, they want animators." And I said, "Sure, you want my kind of animator? Like, you know, I'm a pencil paper guy." Yeah. They want your kind of animator because ILM typically were very technical, computer savvy guys, and so these computer savvy guys were trying to animate. And they said that the software is to the point that it's so intuitive now that it'd be quicker to take a guy who already knows how to animate and teach him the software as opposed to taking a technical guy and having him develop
learn how to
over a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So their big experiment, because I guess Spielberg had come to them and said he wanted to do this movie Casper. He wanted it to feel very traditional in the way it was animated, very 2D, even though it's 3D. And so at that time, this is 1993, and computer animation was in its infancy. There wasn't like a whole, you know, now there is. You can hire an army of computer animators.
Sure.
Rewind. This is before that. This is before the internet. Right? And so, so that's how I got into the business. It literally was from my friend going to this lecture by ILM, and I ended up working for them for one movie. And at the end of that movie, they said, "Okay, so you're rolling on to A New Hope." I'm like, "Really?" Because there's only 2 slots for that, isn't it? Because like for Casper, they had maybe 25 to 30 animators.
Wow.
They wanted 2 guys for A New Hope, so I didn't hold much hope that I was going to get on that movie. It turned out that 6 months before that, when I was working on Casper, I got to do the Boba Fett thing. 6 months before I ever got to work on the movie doing the creature effects. So those 2 things are completely unrelated. Completely. The fact that I'm in the same movie that I got to animate the creatures on is this. I don't know. It's the world, the universe works in mysterious ways. So.
Right. We'll get to that. So don't get too detailed on that yet.
Well,
we're going to get into. Okay, good. How you got to there? Yeah. Great. Yeah. Perfect. By the way, I see the helmet right above your head. A Fett guy will always spot. Oh, I see this whole suit there. Okay, now I see. There you go. Cool. Very awesome.
Yeah. That's sweet. A post.
Sweet. Okay, we'll get back to that. Let's go backwards a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
What was your first experience with Star Wars?
My very first experience, I was in my living room, and there's a program they had on TV, British TV. It was called the Krypton Factor. It was like a BBC, I think a BBC show. It was testing the knowledge of these like super intelligent MIT guys or whatever, and finding who's the best at doing all these different puzzles. Taking pieces of disassembled pieces and trying to make this, find out what they try to make, who's the first to construct it. One part was watching a clip of movie material, usually movies that were either newly released or about to be released. And so they showed this clip, and I wasn't interested in the show. I was kind of watching. But then they showed this clip of the Millennium Falcon being drawn in with the tractor beam into the Death Star, and I was like, "Oh my god, what is this?" Because I was a huge sci-fi fan.
Yeah,
I loved sci-fi, so Silent Running, Close Encounters, all those movies were like my bread and butter. I loved medieval knights. I loved cowboy movies, spaghetti westerns in particular, and so. When I saw this movie, it was like they pulled everything that I loved and kind of put it into this one movie. But I only saw that one clip. I only saw that one clip to begin with, to answer your question. It was the Millennium Falcon entering the hangar and all that music playing. And oh my God, I was like blown away.
Do you remember what year that was?
That must have been 77. It must have been like spring of 77, like before May or June. It was before the movie released. They were saying about this movie coming out. And I have to see this movie.
Okay, so you did see it then.
I bought the book before the movie came out. I bought the book and read it before the movie came out. So yeah, I was already hooked before I saw anything.
Right. So you saw the film then in 77?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And do you remember how you felt when you came out of the film?
Yeah. It was like an overload. It was like I woken up from a drug crazed night before or something like that. But I was only at the age of 11. I came out of this movie just kind of my head buzzing. For one thing, I didn't hardly understand anything that was said, especially Harrison Ford. I didn't understand any of his mumbled lines. I was like, I didn't care, but I didn't understand. I understood 3PO perfect. But I didn't care. I was hooked and I wanted to see it again. And I ended up, my mother bought me this 12-inch vinyl record of the story of Star Wars, and it had sound clips. It was all sound clips with a bit of narration between. And so that's how I got to know, oh, that's what's happening. I got to listen to this and understand from repeated listening what Harrison Ford was mumbling. And those quick quips, because it was a very wordy movie. George Lucas's dialogue, very wordy. So, I mean, I played that record to death. Literally just got played on repeat. I know every line in a movie, half the lines from this long time record.
So I assume this is all in England, right? Because you came to the States later.
Yeah.
Very cool. So even across the pond. And do you remember there was massive lines, the air, the feeling?
Yeah, it wasn't as crazy as the States. I've seen the pictures of the States, and I just think, it's just the British are a little bit more reserved, I guess. Or it just wasn't as. I think it spread faster in the States. It took to spread in England. But it was still as manic, and people just loved the movie, and it's all I could think about for the next probably 4 years with Star Wars. Until the next one came out, and that just hyped everything back up again.
Yeah, that when you see those massive lines, that's mostly California, some New York, but you would, while it wasn't on that scale in other states, there were still a line. There were still a lot of people, and they were coming back, and it was all through the opening weekend, and then for several months. I mean, just people constantly coming. What was that?
They didn't do that anymore, but that's how they used to do it. Every movie had a line, and you got in the line for your movie. That was just the way it was. There was always a line. Didn't matter which movie it was. That's the way they did it. Now it's just buy a ticket in advance, or pre-order it, or just walk in and buy a ticket and go and sit down. But before, you had to wait there for like a good half an hour.
Oh yeah, I mean, some people were there for days, months ahead of time. It was insanity for Star Wars. So which of the OT is your favorite? New Hope, Empire, or Empire?
Without a doubt, Empire. It just was. It was. I didn't know how they could match what I'd seen. I thought the most they could do is match what I've seen. It couldn't get any better than that. But then it just elevated everything so much. And it was like a roller coaster that you were still on the roller coaster when they stopped it. It was like, okay, we're going to continue. Like, damn it. What's going to happen? Where they're going? They're leaving. And it was, I don't know. There's something about, I think maybe it's like, it was because it was dark, maybe. It was the attraction. I don't know. There's just something about, maybe it was because of Boba Fett. That was one of the biggest kind of expectations on my part, because I'd already got the action figure.
So you guys had, like us, the early bird, like you knew about Boba Fett before.
Yes. Okay. I read the bio. There's a commercial, a one-page commercial, and it shows this guy. And when I read it, I was like I was reading about myself. Because I said, this is just like me. Because my friends would say, like one of the things they thought was a kind of a weirdness, because I'm an artist. I was kind of always off on my own. Kind of a loner as a kid. I had friends, but not like I wasn't stuck, glued to the hip like some other friends were. I had friends that came in and they were friends for a few years and they drift off, and another friend would come in, and I was pretty much a loner. You know, I'd go off doing my art projects and stuff like that. And, so when I read this bio, I just read it. It felt like I was reading about Good, Bad, the Ugly, like Clint Eastwood, but in Star Wars, you know, and the kind of mysterious man with no name. I was like, oh my god, it's like everything I love. It has that kind of I love Spartans. It's got like a Spartan feel to it with a T-visor. It's got like a knights in armor feel to it, which I loved. The T-visor. He's a bounty hunter. No, this is my favorite character, but in my favorite franchise now.
Right.
I had huge expectations going in to see Empire, and I wasn't disappointed. So.
Yeah, no, I was very similar, very much the same. I saw him in the holiday special, and I was like, that's it. That's my guy. And to this day, he's my favorite character of any film, TV, comic, anything, Boba Fett. And I was very anxious to see him in Empire. And while he doesn't say and do much, you know, Fett fans get it. You know who he is. You know what he's about, what he can do. And he doesn't have to show because, you know, or he doesn't have to tell because he just shows you, you know. And if you get it, you get it. That, you know, disintegrations is for a reason. And yeah, you know, absolutely. I'm very much right on line with you. Same reasoning and, you know, same kind of experience. And once I saw him, it was love at first sight. You know, ever since, nobody close for me to Boba Fett. I mean, I like a lot of other stuff like Spider-Man and different things, but Boba Fett.
And before Boba Fett, the action figure, I was obsessed with the Stormtrooper. Like the Stormtrooper was like I couldn't think of anything more sexy. I didn't see any uniform sexier or badass or just everything about the design was perfect. And then as soon as Boba Fett came on, the big shadow get cast. Poor old Stormtrooper. Sorry, Stormtrooper, but I do love you still. I do love you. But Boba Fett took over.
Well, and they also don't have Slave One.
Yeah. But I'm a huge Falcon fan as well. I love the Falcon. I'm so glad that you know, any pictures of me have the Falcon in the background. It's like, I have like a connection to the Falcon.
How lucky! How cool! And who would have thought? You know, or you know, could have never imagined as a kid seeing A New Hope that, you know, what was it, 20-ish years later, you would be there in the.
Well, there was no such thing as a special director's cut back then.
Right.
Like back in the 70s or the 1980s, sorry. You know, there wasn't such a thing as, I think they came later, a few years later, because I think one of the first ones was, I think, Blade Runner, maybe. I can't remember. There was a big movie that had a director's cut.
Blade Runner, yeah, I believe it was.
It did, but there's one before that. I can't think of what it is. But so because everyone says I must have been a dream come true, but yeah, it was a dream, but I never thought it could ever come true because the movie's already been made.
Right.
I had this action figure and expectations, but the only thing I'd seen was New Hope. So it's funny, all my stories were Boba Fett, but in New Hope. And I had never predicted, one day you're going to be Boba Fett in New Hope. If someone said that to me, I wouldn't believe them.
Yeah, right.
Talking silly, you know.
You never know where life's going to take you. So that's, you know, that's so awesome. I'm so happy for you as a Fett fan. You know, it would be a dream for me too to have any association to Boba in the films.
Any would have been really
anything. He is a hand, you know, a glove and a shot, you know, anything. Yeah, absolutely. You know, so I understand, and I'm so happy for you. You know, what a dream. Very, very cool. So what about Jedi? Did you not like it, or just not as much?
I was just shocked.
But
I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
And I understand why George did it. I understand. Don't agree with it, but I understand why he did it, because, you know, this action figure becomes the most popular action figure ever. forget Luke Skywalker action figure, forget Darth Vader. We want Boba Fett, and he was like, "What's going on? This is not right. My heroes and my villains should be the most popular figure, not this side character." So, I understand why he did it. I'm sure he regrets it now.
Oh, well, I've heard him say quotes like, if I would have known he would have been that popular, I would have given him a much more glorious death. He's like, wow, I didn't realize, people were going to go this crazy. But, and I've said it to my listeners before, some people don't care about or don't know about Boba Fett, but know that there is a whole culture of Boba Fett fan clubs, films, collections. It's always one of the top, most highest valued toys of all toys is the Boba Fett. So there's a quite like a cult for Boba Fett. A lot of people aren't even aware of, but
and the cult. Remember back in the day, the cult had started with an enigma because the whole rocket firing. Well, how come I didn't fire the rocket? And this whole mythology attached to the rocket firing, the L slot and J slot, whole enigma. It had depth to it. It had history already, and it was just an action figure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also try to always remind people that like the Mando mercs, a lot of cosplay, all the clones, the movie Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars cartoons, all of that, Mandalorians, the Mandalorian show, all of that is because Fett.
Yeah. And
so like any of that stuff, that is all because of Boba. That's why you have it. Is this guy right here? That's it. So it's amazing the impact he has had, probably more than anyone else, any other character in the Star Wars universe as far as the scale. Boba Fett is.
But okay, I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
I think back to 1980 when you became a fan of this character. Like back in the day, I thought I was, pretty much alone in this.
Oh no.
Think back to 1980. Did you think you were not alone in 1980?
Yes and no. Like I didn't have a lot of friends or contact with people that were like, "Oh, I got Boba Fett. I got Boba Fett." It was more isolated. Like I was just a Boba Fett nut. But I would read things like Starlog or Conversation, Street Talk, and I knew, that Boba Fett was, deal. And then early internet, you would go in like forums, forum boards and stuff, and you would see that. I mean, Boba Fett, and people wanted comics, and there was all kinds of lore. He would show up in the EU. So there was definitely, if you were keeping your ear to the street, as we say, then you would know that yes, there was always a big buzz. As far as my friends in high school and all that, no, I mean,
I'm talking before the internet, when it was just literally you and your school friends, and everyone kind of made fun of me because I was a Star Wars freak. I loved Star Wars. I was obsessed with Star Wars. Like, oh, he's obsessed with Star Wars. Kind of a weirdo. Was an artist. Got a good with artistic license in what he likes. He likes Star Wars. Kids think that he loves it.
No, I agree. Back then it was more isolated because we didn't have as much connection. But on the same token, it's like any kind of extreme following, you find each other.
Yeah,
you hear.
It took a couple of years to realize that.
It did take a little bit of time, but you do. It's so passionate that you start to hear things and see things and find others, and you get into conversations. Maybe you have a Boba Fett shirt on, and somebody would be like, "Oh, awesome shirt," or "Wow, cool Boba Fett." So little things would happen here and there, and it's like, yep. People know. Again, to the kind of normie crowd or the majority crowd, he's just some guy that didn't say anything and died. But I will remind everyone, there's a huge Boba Fett following, more so than any other, fan club, or at least in the Star Wars realm.
Yeah.
And of course, Anakin and Vader and Luke and all these, they have massive followings. But the Boba Fett thing is a whole craze. People wear suits and helmets and their own versions of the toys and the blaster and all that stuff. So absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I remember in my action figure. I mean, this is like people would shoot me for this now, but it had the rangefinder sculpted to the helmet, And it's funny now that I'm friends with the guys that made all these toys now, like Jim Swearinger, and they're all like friends of mine that email me every day. And such a weird thing to think. I never thought I'd end up where I was as a kid and being Boba Fett. But the other thing is, I never thought I'd be friends with these cast members.
Right, prop makers and cast members, all that
stuff. But I remember I chopped off very carefully with a scalpel. I chopped off the antenna bit, and I heat up a pin and stuck it in, and I changed my little action figures. I put a cape on him, like a material cape. I have him still. When I came to the States, I bought 2 action figures with me. One was a repainted Boba Fett, and one was a Jawa with a plastic cape that I never thought would end up being the value it is, but bizarre. But yeah, he was a character apart from the rest.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, I honed in on this one character. Everyone thinks, oh, you're obsessed with Boba Fett because you were Boba Fett. No. I was obsessed with Boba Fett in 1980. This is like, I never would have foreseen everything to follow. But,
yeah, and some people don't realize that. A lot of us, Holiday Special or Empire, once you saw him, it was game over. That was it,
But there's still people I work with now. When I joined Netflix, I joined this show that I'm working on now, and I said to everyone, just to get it out of the way, that I'm a huge Boba Fett fan, and I was Boba Fett, so and this girl again, months later said, "Oh, I didn't realize that you actually were Boba Fett." It's like, I announced it. Even when you tell people up front,
it
doesn't compute, doesn't stick.
Right.
And people I had an aunt, my auntie Carol. I've been in States for a long time, but I'm still in contact with my family and English friends. And I have she's my auntie, not my real blood relative, but my mum's friend since I was a kid. My auntie Carol, she suddenly turned around. This is a few years ago. I just found out why you keep posting with Boba Fett pictures. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't tell you. You don't know who you told and who you haven't told. So you don't want to be the guy that just, guess what? You don't want to be that guy. So I'd rather, if I'm not sure, I'd just assume they know.
Right.
And I guess and some people say, how come you didn't tell me? It's not that I didn't tell you. I just don't want to be that guy that just, that's all he just says,
Right. Well, and you've done a lot of other work, in my opinion, far and away, the most important thing you did was Boba Fett. But you've done a lot of other really awesome stuff, so absolutely.
And that's where most people know me. Most people know me as the previous guy or the animator guy. And they see me as that. He's that supervisor from Disney or whatever. They forget about this one detail. It gets kind of clouded over by whatever we are working on together. So usually the people I work with are the first to forget because there's a bigger, more important, thing it's a current project we're working on. So that gets pushed out of the way. So people they even I tell them and they'll forget. And then oh yeah, you did tell me that one time. But
yeah, no, absolutely.
In my head, every day I am grateful that I'm Boba Fett. Every day. Every single day.
No, and I would be too. Again, I'm a huge Fett fan, so I can relate. I totally understand. That would be such a dream for me, and probably other people outside hear us and they're like, "Whatever, Boba Fett." But I can genuinely,
you get it.
I get it. Absolutely. Even if I could have just been on the set watching, I would have been like, ah.
Well, there were a couple of things that happened before the blue screen shoot that you probably know from. I don't know if you've listened to other podcasts, but when I got to just look at the suit, I thought that was like, oh my God! I went to the archives and Don Bees and Nelson Hall. They said, oh, what's your passion? you're obviously a squid head, which was their word for Star Wars fan. You're obviously a squid head, but what's your passion? I said, Boba Fett. That's all I care about, Boba Fett. Oh, we just happened to have the Boba Fett over on that table over there. Photos of me like touching the armor, and I didn't think that it could get any better than that. I was working for Lucasfilm. Like, what could get better? I'm working for the man. I'm holding the helmet. Well, I thought it was the helmet. There's like 6 or 7 of them, but holding one of them, and I took pictures of his armor. I wanted to buy an action figure, not an action figure, like a model, like a model kit, and of Boba Fett. There was a really skinny one that they released. I can't remember who the brand was now, but I wanted to get pictures of the actual suit so I could get the colors correct. Because all the colors, you get color, you get photographs on the movie, and it depends what light they have on. So
right,
it's going to affect the color.
Yeah.
So this was like the actual colors. So I thought that was the highest. It can't get any better for a Boba Fett fan than to actually touch the suit that was in the movie. And then they asked if I would, if I got the opportunity to try on the suit for a summit, promotional summit, and so that was 4 hours wearing this suit, and I didn't think it could get better than that. And then they had a second summit, and I said, "Would you do a second?" Of course,
I'll pay you to do it.
So I did another 4 hours in the suit, and I thought it couldn't get any better than that. And then, of course, a blue screen shoot opportunity came along. And by that time, I was the guy that fit the suit. I'd already done it for 2 functions, worn it for 2 functions at Skywalker Ranch. They didn't have to worry about trying to find someone. They knew I knew everything Boba Fett, so that I would know how Jeremy Bullock walked. That's the slight head turns that was probably John Morton. Probably the head turns the best bit of Boba.
Right.
But I knew how to. I knew the character a little bit. So So again, it's like I always thought that that's the best it can be, and it just gets better. Just gets better.
Lucky bastard.
Spoil rotten.
So, kind of going back to what you were saying before, how you came in to do the animation, and then you pretty much told us, but is there any little other gaps there that how you actually got into the film?
The animation came 6 months, as I said, 6 months after I did this blue screen shoot. I had to go to Casper and ask them for the day off. And they not only gave me the day off, but Janet Healy, the producer, said, "We'll even pay you for it. Take the day, enjoy it." And everyone was like cheering me on because they knew how big a fan I was. So they couldn't imagine what it must be like to have this kind of opportunity. Because my desk was a shrine in Casper. I was working on Casper, but my whole desk was Boba Fett. How can we? I had drawings of Casper because I was the supervising animator for Casper, so I had a lot of Casper drawings that I'd done for especially the face shapes and the different expressions. But if half the wall was Casper, the other half was all Boba Fett, and I did end up making that model kit, and it was on my desk. It was like a Boba Fett Casper shrine. So there was nobody questioning what's your favorite character. Nobody at ILM anyway.
Right. So on the special editions, I'm not clear. Did you ever meet George, or was he not even there? He just had a crew, or how did that all work out?
He wasn't there. He was invested, but not fully. He was thinking more about the future. He was working with Rick McCallum on this idea for the prequels. So I did meet him a few times, but even when you're working with him, you'll get the talk before he arrives. Okay, George is coming in, so only speak to him if he speaks to you. Don't ask him anything. Don't bug him. No questions. Don't even mention Star Wars. He can talk to you about Star Wars. You can't talk to him about Star Wars. And let him let him instigate any interaction. Very weird. It's like I'm meant to be working with this guy on making a movie for him. You know, anyway, we had the talk, and this whole kind of protection of George was something that I think he tolerated, but he wasn't loving, because he always seemed kind of everything he said. You had like at least 3 guys saying, "Oh, it's great, George. It's great, George. Yeah, write that down. Yeah, that's definitely Oh, wonderful." It doesn't matter what it said. He could have just, brain farted and it's great. And someone writes it down and logs it. And if I was surrounded by someone, if I was surrounded by an entourage, that everything I did and said, they were like marveling over. It'd be great for maybe a day,
Right.
but few years of that, and you'll be like, oh god, there's no one. I'm not interacting with anybody. So there was one time that we were in dailies, and we were looking at the dailies, and in the dailies, I had sneaked in a shot, or an alternate version for a shot that I was told to take out by the producer. I'd put it in and suffer the consequences. I might lose my job. Oh, who cares? I'm putting it in. Take a chance. And George loved it. And but when it came up, he's like, "Oh, what's this?" So my hand comes up at the back. Mr. Lucas, that's just an alt version. Version B, I call it. Version A, version B. Version A was the balded version, horrible shot. Version B was my version. And so suddenly he woke up, someone's talking to me, And so what's this alt version? Okay, now I can answer because he's spoken to me. Like gate, everything goes from here. So we started chatting, and then suddenly he kind of like comes out this kind of like funk fog, and he's like instigating. And when we're chatting, and I was thinking of the George kind of pulling as he coaxes in the dewback round like a horse almost, and it kind of it's reluctant, but then the dewback goes and turns around, rather than the shot just being the dewback's butt from the beginning to the end. I think this would be a much nicer shot. And he's like, I think let's go with that version. And from that point on, we had a much better working relationship. And you couldn't ever instigate. You had to wait for him to talk to you. It was the rule, And I don't want to not work at Lucasfilm. I want to work. So I abided by the rules, but any opportunity I could to talk to him, there was a couple of times that we really did. I don't know. I think he's a little bit stifled by his yes man, I called them. He's kind of they're there to protect him, but in a way that's. I found the same thing a couple of times. When I worked with Spielberg, he had the kind of same kind of thing. So, but Spielberg's a bit more. He doesn't need an entourage. He's a bit more. George was always surrounded. I don't know why. I don't think that was his call to be surrounded. I think
probably. I would think PR and agents and stuff, but I think it's also probably because when you create the biggest film of all time, you just get mobbed all the time. So over time, it probably kind of developed to where he had to have a shield. And I think, I don't know. I've never met him, but I always got the impression that, probably a lot of people would waste his time and come up with dumb ideas and just want to blah, 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 blah. So he had to filter. But I also have noticed that if you showed him something, some ingenuity, something of interest, something artistic, and he appreciated it, that he would kind of open up and he would kind of embrace you. It's just that, when you're George Lucas, you're hearing 35 stupid pitches before you even had your cup of coffee. You know what I mean? So, but once you kind of get that in with him, I've always felt that, he will connect with you. And I know that from like Rinsler and different people, that, when you got in with him, he was, very personable.
Yeah, I just thought that the access would be different considering I was his employee, that we're there to discuss, we're there to work on something. So I thought that at that point it would be but no, you still had to abide by these silly rules. But, I was hoping he'd turn up to the blue screen shoot. He never did, unfortunately. But I really wanted him to turn up to the blue screen shoot. Because this is before I got to work with him. This is, like I said, 6 months before I was working with him. So I just wanted to see him, meet him. I didn't know that 6 months later I'd be working with him. So.
Was he aware that you were the one in the suit, or maybe later, or did that never?
Didn't know. That's what I mean. So if I ever bump into him, that's the way I get to talk to him next. Because we've got two things in common. There's two contributions I've made to his franchise.
That's interesting how you had like those two parallels with him, and maybe he didn't connect the dots. I would think maybe now.
It's the same with Spielberg, though. Spielberg, I mean, because you got to remember that these guys, they work with, I don't know how many people, an army of people. So when I worked with Spielberg on Warhorse, I really wanted to remind him of, we worked together on Casper. And, I even had my Casper jacket on just to see if he would kind of recognize it, because they were specially made for the crew. And but he never did. So. But that's if I ever bump into Spielberg, we've got something to talk about as well.
Yeah. Well, and those guys interact with so many people. I don't think it's that they don't care. It's such a big, huge production. I'm sure just for the special edition, it must have been quite a crew, So, and then when you think of all the thousands of people that George interacted with between ILM employees, crew, model builders, fans, interviews, I mean, you just get lost. But yeah, no, I mean, that's cool. So what was there a lot more film than what we saw in the special edition, or is that pretty much what was done? And how did it feel to finally put the bucket on and, start filming?
Well, you're talking about just the Boba Fett scenes, yeah? Not
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just up for the blue screen shoot, my biggest fear was messing up, because I was nervous as hell, because it was almost like I was going on a date, or something. It was a long love affair of years and years and years, kind of culminating in this one day shooting. So I was kind of worried that I was going to mess up, or that something would go wrong and that it wouldn't be, the idea would be rejected, because they didn't have any camera information, because all the camera information from 1976 and 7 was destroyed. Normally they archive everything, so that if you ever have to, like we had to reshoot, then they had the height of the camera, the lens of the camera, the distance of the camera from the subject, from Harrison Ford, from all that stuff was gone. And so it was on the shoulders of Steve Williams, who ended up directing that blue screen shoot, to guesstimate the height of the camera, just from eyeballing, and they kept adjusting it. They kept changing lenses, and I had to walk this was that first shot where I walk in and stop next to Jabba. So I just had to do that walk on, I don't know how many times, but it was great for rehearsal, because I'd done it maybe 100 times by the time we started shooting, because they had to set the lighting as well to see if it could make it match. There were a lot of small tweaks they were doing, and so it was just walk. Okay, back to start point, walk again. Back to start point, walk again, like all morning. And I didn't care. I was in the suit.
The longer I can be in the suit, the better.
Or I can soak up, Jerry Bullock's sweat. It literally was. I just wanted it to go. I wanted everything to go right. That was my biggest fear, was something would go wrong, and they wouldn't use it, or I was so close to being like the pinnacle of what a Boba Fett fan could want.
Sure, of course.
Was so close. So I just was deathly worried that something would go wrong. So I was all about listening, trying to see as best I could, but keeping that visor up, but looking through the vertical slot at my start point. Make sure my start point, make sure the gun is. I couldn't hold the gun naturally like I could when I did the summits, when I did those 8 hours in the suit. I held the gun, I was pretty comfortable with it. But for the shot to look better, they wanted me to hold the gun to the side for better silhouette.
Okay.
But my first shot is like me standing very awkwardly. And I'm like, how can this look good? It must look terrible, but I followed instruction and it looks great on film. It didn't feel great because it was it felt pushed, the pose, when I was doing it. But it looked great on film. And then, so we did the first shot in the morning, broke for lunch. Hour later, we set up for the second shot, which was more involved. It was to walk to a point, stop, look around, make sure that everything's cool, and walk off that way. Oh, but when I walked in, I had to be looking at a piece of tape that was Harrison Ford's last known eye line position at the top of the Falcon ramp. So I had to look at that way until I got to so you have to look at your mark, but you look there, all in this visor, hold the gun like that. And of course, when I'm looking to check to make sure the docking bay is clear, I swing my head around and I'm looking. I have no idea that this is lining up to the camera because I'm turning as far as I can to look. And then they can see because they're looking on the monitor. I can't see anything. I'm just on the blue screen ship on the stage. So I'm not sure how many takes this happened on, but George selected the last take. Apparently, it's his way. He always selects the last one, or most of the time. And the last one, it looked like I was mugging the camera. But George, I guess, loved it. He thought it was great that it looked like that. It looked like intimidating. Oh, I'm looking at you. Jet. He chose it. So everyone says, why did you look at the camera? I didn't. I don't care that it looks like I did. If George is happy, I'm happy. Everyone says, how could you work in the special edition? I hate the special edition. If someone else had come up to me and said, I'm going to do new scenes in Star Wars, I would have been, why? But if George comes up and says, I'm going to do new scenes in Star Wars, okay, it's your movie. What do you want to change?
Right, exactly.
There were some things that happened after I left. I didn't know anything about the Greedo shot. Didn't know anything about it. I thought it was a vicious rumor. Because I'd already finished. I'd done all the shots, and I'd left. I guess they pulled one of my shots back, and they got someone to add in the robot thumping. It was a big wide of them going into the Mos Eisley, big, huge wide. But at the beginning of it, it was pretty tight, and they got someone in to do a droid knocking the other one. I was like, really? They did that? It was fine as it was, and there was one shot that I did work on that I hated doing, and I argued. It was that whole Ronto conundrum. That Ronto shot, the infamous Ronto rearing up shot.
Right.
I worked on that shot. I'd done a couple of other Rontos being led by guys, live action guys in the play. I had to animate the rope going from the hand to the Ronto. In this shot, there was a Ronto. He didn't have a guy. He just was walking through with stuff on his back. And a speeder comes in and he weaves through and goes, and that was it. And it was done. I thought, this is an easy shot. Like one in the bag, because I was the only creature animator. John Knoll took all the spaceships. Everything that was creatures that wasn't a spaceship was on my plate. So, this is one I can write off. It's a big shot. It's a big, long shot. I just got my walk cycle in there for the Ronto, made it look like the perspective was correct. Speeder in there. I thought it was done. And so we go into a room, and I expected this to be just one I could cross off. I think I even crossed it off already. this is done. And then George says, who's leading that Ronto? I said, well, normally we pick a guy, but there was no one in the plate to use. So he's just walking by himself. That's not right. Can we have a guy? So do we have any guys we can have sitting on the Ronto, like riding it? No, we don't. Do we have any Jawas? Oh yeah, I've got one in my pocket. No, we don't have any Jawas. But something he's covered is always yes men. Oh, but we can make one, George. Yeah, that's a great idea. We can make one. Let's write it down. Jawa, yeah, Jawa. So I was worried about the cloth capes, but they provided a Jawa that had 4 chains hanging from it.
Okay.
And those 4 chains I got to kind of make it look like cloth a bit.
No lettuce?
But I was starting to worry about this shot. I was like, oh no, this isn't finished. Okay. Yeah. Let's have a Jawa on there, and I know when the speeder comes up, let's have the Ronto react to it, like back up a bit. Okay, we can do that. Oh no! I know we can have it rear up like a horse. Really? I was imagining the Jurassic Park Brachiosaur is really slow. And I was like,
right.
Really? There's not enough time to do this properly, and it wasn't very well rigged. It's a whole nother story. But I was starting to worry about the shot, and he's like, "Oh no, let's have it so that okay, we've got 2 Jawas. We'll put one on the back, one on the front, and when he rears up, one falls off the back. It'll be hilarious. One falls off the back, it'll be dust and cloud. Big dust cloud comes up, and okay, I started writing it down. Oh no, this would be great. When it happens, when one falls off the back, the other one falls off the front, and he's hanging, swinging around, and I'm like, where? This is an establishing shot. This isn't a scene. It's not like a moment. Like, why are we making this huge moment? And we're going to leave. It's going to happen, and we're gone. Like, this is. It was a whole lot of animation I didn't want to do. It was done. I thought it was finished, and so that was the only shot. That and the first dewback shot, I hated working on because there were too many cooks in the kitchen for both those. The first dewback shot was, there was, I couldn't have fit more people in the room, and everyone had an opinion, and everyone's saying, "Oh, to add this and all the yes men saying, "Okay, yeah." So make sure the leg lifts up on this frame. I'm like, can I just do my job? I know how to make this creature walk. Oh no, what's happening is you're doing it wrong. When the leg lifts up, the pelvis should rise up with the leg. And actually, it's the other way around. The pelvis drops from the planted leg. No. Trust me. And so it was like a circus. And it got to the point where that shot went over budget. And so they said, you've already used up the budget on this. But I haven't finished. Wow. I haven't put any reins in the hands of the stormtroopers yet. I know that's done. No one will care. Yes, they will. So I had to work after 6 o'clock in my own time to finish that shot off because they went out budget to put those reins in the hands of the troopers. And in addition to the whole, we could do a whole hour just talking about that dewback shot. But long story cut short, it felt to me like stop motion animation. It was so clunky in the end. I went to the producer, Tom Kennedy, and I said, the Ireland producer, not Rick McCallum, the big producer. I went to Tom Kennedy, he's the Ireland producer. I said, I know this shot's gone over budget. I said, but I really feel like if I was left to make the animation decisions, this is the magic word I used. I said, I think it'll be cheaper. $, ching.
Right.
Oh, we'll try that on the next shot. And so they tried it on the next shot, and sure enough, it went through, and the dewback looked great. And so from that point on, I was kind of left animation was left to me. Those guys were more constrained on making sure the comp worked and the lighting was correct and that kind of stuff. And so they were cheaper, but they were better. There's just too many cooks in the kitchen, and I wasn't. You got to think of the position I was in. What I'd done was computer animation for 18 months. I'm not exactly a authority to tell these guys what to do. So I was kind of at their beck and call, kind of a whipping boy for that first shot.
Right.
But after that, after the next shots came out looking better and coming out faster, then they just, okay, we'll leave him alone. Mark's got it, So all the other do-back shots turned out way better than that first one. That first one that they always show is the most, if you watch the Stormtrooper, it looks a bit stop motion-y, whatever.
I know what you're talking about. And I think that most of us, going back a little bit, aren't crazy about a lot of the stuff that he did with the special edition. But I said it many times on my live streams. Star Wars is not yours, and Star Wars is not mine. It's George's. And if at the end of the day George wants to do what he wants to do, he's the maker, he's the creator. And I always respect what he says is what's canon and what it is. That's it. Doesn't mean we have to love everything. Doesn't mean that you have to love it or agree with all of it. But if you love Star Wars truly, genuinely, then you're going to accept what George says. George says it is, and that's what it is. If you don't like what George did and you hate it, well, then maybe you're not a Star Wars fan.
Maybe not,
it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm a Star Wars / George Lucas fan.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I read the book. First of all, I read the book. I never, before Star Wars, I never really paid attention to what the director name was. Maybe the exception like Cecil B. DeMille presents, the Ten Commandments. When it's hammered into the title, then I knew. But other than that, I didn't care. But George Lucas, I knew. This is wow. His story's amazing. His movie's amazing. I didn't think I was ever gonna work with this guy ever. That was a dream at that point. So yeah. He's tried some stuff. He tried some stuff while I was there that were pretty lame ideas. He wanted to see a version of the Princess Leia's rescue in the detention center, A23. He wanted to see a version of that where they edited out any stormtroopers or officers being shot and just replayed a camera or an alarm being blown up. Just to see it, he wanted to minimize or cut down on the violence for some reason. So we went to see theater. We saw a version where they substituted all those shots with a copy of the alarm being shot or whatever, and shoot. Where did everyone go? And he's like, okay, that doesn't work. Because it's like shoot. Where did everyone go? It didn't work. So he rejected it. And so I thought the same thing when I heard about the cantina shot with Greedo. I thought, it's something he's thought about. They've showed it, and he rejected it. He must have rejected it because it takes away Han's art. Why would you do that? So I didn't believe it until I saw it. And it was a kind of a punch to the gut.
Yeah.
It was a punch to the gut when you see someone's messed with your shots as well. Like when I saw that robot thumping, I don't know. There's some things you don't do. You don't mess with other people's shots. I think. But if George had asked for that,
yeah, I mean, and again, we have to respect it's his vision, it's his story.
Yeah, and a lot of those changes did enhance it for me. Like I do remember the pink flames when the wire wings blew up. I remember them. They were pink, and I thought that's weird. Maybe it's because it's in space. It's a blue screen leaching out all the yellows, so the blues to make that leave it kind of pinkish. What we had to do is interesting. Was that the technology was such that our stuff looked more crisp than the 1977 footage.
Well, yeah, the special editions cleaned a lot of stuff up. Outside of the extra scenes, people forget that the audio and the visual was cleaned up dramatically.
Yeah. But what we had to do is create a filter, a CG filter it's called the pantyhose filter. It was to replicate what George had done. He put a pantyhose over the front of the camera for filming most of the scenes. The reason being that he didn't want anyone seeing the details, like the rivet or the screw that was holding that uniform together or something. He didn't want to expose the details. So by putting a filter on it, you kind of push it back and soften it. And so we had to make a pantyhose filter for all the special edition shots to kind of replicate that pantyhose of the camera. And when I was working on New Hope Special Edition, they were only ever going to do New Hope Special Edition. They weren't going to do Empire.
Oh, okay.
They weren't going to do Return of the Jedi. Just New Hope. And the reason being they were going to have their new movies coming out, and they felt like going from digital to optical effects would have a dip. And so he wanted to just bump up that dip, just bump it up so it wasn't as obvious. But they were never going to do Empire. If I'd known they were going to do Empire and Jedi, I wouldn't have left.
I was going to ask you that. Why didn't you end up on Empire and Jedi?
Because Disney.
Okay,
Disney.
before we get to that, let me ask you two important questions before I forget.
Okay.
First of all, your Boba Fett scene, why is there no mythosaur on his shoulder? Was there any discussion of that? Asked about that on the other side. Okay, so why is that?
I explained before that they threw together a suit for this ranch, Skywalker Ranch Summit. And when I put the suit on, I said, wait a minute, you got these wrong way around. Well, it doesn't matter, it's just a summit. It doesn't matter. I didn't push it because I didn't want them to say, okay, well, you can be a different character. Or, oh, right. Okay, well, maybe this is not a good idea. I just wanted to do it. So I didn't care. Fine, I can live with this. I don't care. So I did the summit. I did the second summit, same thing. No one changed it. And when I did the blue screen shoot, I was working with Annie. Annie was my costume wardrobe. She was head of wardrobe. She also, dressed like Dickie Beer on the set of Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
So she knew the suit. And I said, Annie, these are the wrong way around. Because, well, we can't do anything now. We're shooting.
That's interesting because if George was around, I'm sure he would have said, no, that needs to be on the right side.
George wouldn't have said that. He would have just waved it off. He is one of those guys that thinks that, well, yes, someone could watch the laser disc and find things, but otherwise people just watch it and they'll be, if they're looking at that, then I'm not doing my job properly as a filmmaker. And so he kind of waved it off. He would have waved it off. I'm sure he would have, just from working with him after that, and just things he said.
More so to get it done than...
He's not a details person. He doesn't care if someone goes back and sees that stormtrooper hit his head. Like, as long as everyone goes to see the movie and they come out of the movie, it's great. Maybe the seventh time they see it, they see a stormtrooper hit their head. That's fine. He doesn't care about that.
I thought the first time, but that's me.
I didn't see it for years.
Wow.
And I never saw it because all I saw, I looked for the lead guy. I watched the lead guy come in. I never watched the guy behind. And I can't remember when it was, but it must be like maybe a decade after. I never saw it ever. But then I do like to kind of let the the movie carry me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to be fair, I wouldn't have seen it the first time because I was 3 years old. But when I was a little bit older and like really got the film, I definitely picked it up. But then again, I have like this gift and a curse that I see every little detail, and it's like
I'm free of that curse.
I find like every mistake, and
I do now having worked so much in the, like, if it's a bad cut or the continuity is not working, I'm like, oh, I see it. That's my job. But back then it wasn't. So.
Yeah, I was always curious about that because again, I'm a huge Boba Fett guy, and the details, and I was always curious why is it the myths are there. So that's it. That's cool to know. The second question: the suit behind you, is that the one that you wore? What's the story with that suit that's hanging there?
This is the Don Post full-size statue that was released in like late 90s.
Okay.
The funny thing was when I opened up the box to open it, and I got buried in styrofoam peanuts, and my armchair disappeared completely. It took 12 large black garbage bags to get rid of styrofoam peanuts from that thing. But yeah, he's been around since like late 90s.
Yeah. Were you able to take anything from the set? Anything Boba Fett or anything at all? No memorabilia?
I did have a button from one of the gloves, and I had it in my wallet for the longest time. Just in my wallet, and I don't know where it is now. It might turn up somewhere, but now I put it in a case and frame it.
Right.
But when I did one of the summits, the button came off, and I'm like, okay. Who wants a button?
Right.
And no one would. But I thought it can't be of any value because how can I prove that it was a button for the glove?
Well, but it's valuable to you. That's what matters. Is you know what it is, right? So absolutely. And if you had a friend like me that came over, I'd be like, "Oh my God, a button from Boba Fett's glove."
Exactly.
But it would, obviously someone like me would appreciate it. So that's very cool. So let's go back to Disney. You said, well, Disney happened. So what happened? Why weren't you in the special editions? And how did you kind of go into Disney and all of that?
Well, Disney, I had applied to Disney from England, and I'd sent them I had to post a portfolio, which is expensive, ship that over to Disney. They had it for, I don't know, maybe 2 months. And for that 2 months, I couldn't use it to look for another job. This is before, thumb drives and stuff. You had a VHS and your portfolio, and one copy of my movie Father, and my portfolio, and I travel into London and go to the studio and ask someone to look at it. It's much easier now when you can send it a link through the email, and they can watch it at their leisure. But back then it was a bit more. So Disney keeping my portfolio for 2 months. I hated Disney. I didn't get the job. God damn them! I hate them. I built Disney up so much because as a kid I loved Walt Disney. I loved what he'd done. I loved his philosophy, and I loved the Disney that existed probably maybe a couple of years before I ever joined Disney. And when I joined Disney, I saw the tail end of the studio I wanted to work at, and became very quickly the Eisner studio back then.
When is this? Like 98, 99? Or
this was
around then?
December 96. So 97 onwards. December 4th, 96 it was. I started at Disney. And all my friends, the reason I left was because a lot of my friends had left and gone to Disney and were saying about how much they were investing in the artists, with either lecturers coming in or courses that were free. They didn't just have life drawing, they had 3 different tutors life drawing, so you could have 3 different philosophies. As an artist that wanted to grow, it was like mind blowing for me. I was like, oh my God. At ILM, we had to put money into a hat to rent the model for the night, and we had to tidy up the room that was loaned to us by ILM. But they didn't really invest in their artists as much. They did for like CASHAPP. We did a lot of training. I did 10 weeks of intensive training. Outside of that, it wasn't really. But Disney were, every week they had someone come along and you see heard from Ray Harryhausen, his views about his own work. It was. And I was hearing stories like this, and I'm like, oh my God. I just finished New Hope, and they weren't going to do an Empire, that I knew. They weren't going to do Jedi. They were working on Dragon Heart at the time, thought I might roll up to that to help them finish that movie up. And when it came to my end of my stint on New Hope, I was in the office with Ken Mariano, I think was the head of CG at the time. And I said, this is cool that I was the only animator on New Hope, with John Knoll and doing all the creatures, but I did have on my plate at any one time 5 shots, which is unheard of. You had one shot at a time. And because I was pretty fast, and they had 5 shots. I always had 5 shots. I had to put on my time card which shot I was working on for how many hours to the nearest quarter hour for them to do the budget for each shot. So I said, "This is cool. It's cool, but I think I need a pay rise. If I'm doing the work of 5 people.
Well, yeah, of course.
I need a pay rise." And they said, "Well, you're at the top of our pay scale for computer animators. So the only way you could get a pay rise is if you do something else." I said, "What's the point of that? If I'm good at this,
and that's what you want to do,
right? Why is there a cap on it?" So we had
Mark,
a bit of a
do you mind if we take a 2-minute commercial break and we can pick up again?
Yeah.
Just so I need to do something very quickly, and I literally have a 2-minute commercial.
Okay, let's do it.
And then we'll pick up, and then you can stretch out a little bit. Literally 2 minutes.
Okay.
Great. 2 minutes. I'll see you.
Okay. Go.
Funding for this program is brought to you in part by
historical fiction thriller called All Up. Basically, it's supposed to be I tried very hard to make it an entertaining, page-turning book about the first space age. It comes out on July 14th. It's you can get it as a Kindle book or Apple book, and there'll be an audio book, but it won't be coming out. The audio book will be a little bit later, August or September. And it's a book about what I consider to be, the great adventure of the 20th century. The development of the rocket happens during World War II and before World War II with Robert Goddard, and then with the secret German weapons program during World War II, and MI6 is trying to figure out what the Germans are doing. A lot of cat and mouse, and a lot of intrigue, and it's all very interesting, I thought. And it was a ton of research behind it. So about 90% of the book, I'd say, is based on what really happened. 10% is either speculation or stuff that can't be proved definitively. But and then it goes into the space race and the Apollo 11 trip to the moon. And I think people who give it a chance and read the first 50 pages will be hooked. I'll go out on a limb and say that. Obviously, no book is for everyone, but I hope people who have read my other books will give it a chance, because it's a behind the scenes book. In the same way that making a Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Alien were behind the scenes books, this is also a behind the scenes book.
And by the annual financial support of viewers like you.
Okay. I got a drink and moved around a little bit, turned on the fan, and we'll keep on going. Okay, so you're good. You're ready to go?
Yep.
You were saying pay raise, that you're doing 5 people's jobs, and they're like, you need a different position.
Yeah, and when they rejected it. And so that was the tipping point for me. I was like, okay, well, it was already tempting enough to go to Disney because of all the artist development it was called. And so that was what tipped the scales. But they've been headhunting me after Casper released. So when Casper released in November of '95, they were already kind of like people on the phone, asking you if I'd like to come down to Los Angeles and have a look at what they're working on, this and that. And I said, no, I'm happy where I am. And they thought I was playing hardball. And so they came back with a counter offer. And I said, no, really, this is my dream job. You don't understand. I don't want to leave. And then he came back with a counter offer, and it got to a point where it just was ridiculous. And I was like, I'd be silly to say no at this point, considering that in addition, there's all this investment into developing you as an artist. So, you know, I haven't got. I'm not going to say that everything or my experience at Disney was perfect. It wasn't, but I did grow as an artist. I'd say at least 400%. Like it ballooned. Just exposed to that much talent, like the Eric Goldbergs or the Glenn Kings or the Andreas Deja. Those guys were just inspiring, and they took you under their wing and kind of mentored you. And so to say that I doubled as an artist isn't big enough. It really was more than that. It really did. I'm indebted to Disney for that.
No, I'm sure. I mean, the resources, the scale, obviously you can learn so much. And, it's not to say that Disney is all terrible. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful and magic things there. Very recent current Disney is, not so great, but
I always said to everyone, because they said, what's it like working at Disney? And I said, well, I love Mickey Mouse, but those yellow boots hurt when they kick you up the ass. They're like clogs, and they push you. And Disney's approach was, you're lucky to have your job.
Right.
You don't do your job, there are 100 people willing to take your place. And I thought, that doesn't inspire you. That's not, for me, it doesn't work. I need someone to appreciate what I'm doing and point out the good and the bad and be honest, not to try and scare me into staying until 1 a.m. to work on my shot. I didn't agree with their scare tactics, and because this is the 2000s where there was a series of just axes they just chopped. It'd be like they call it Black Monday or something like that, and that was the day you found out whether you had a job or not.
Wow.
So I'd take a bottle of Jack Daniels to work, and I thought, I'm going to drink this celebrating or commiserating, but one or the other, I'm going to drink the bottle with as many people who want to join me as possible. So, but I survived a number of chops.
What specific department were you in, Luke? Disney Animation? What Pixar? Where were you specifically?
Is Disney Feature Animation in Burbank.
Okay.
So there was Disney Television in Burbank as well. There's a different building, but we were Feature Animation. So it was kind of I didn't realize how much on the cutting edge I was in the work I was doing. There's a lot of things that we came up with that are now industry standard. But a lot of things that are industry standard that just didn't exist then that make my job easier. So it was kind of cool but scary being at Disney and being like, we called ourselves, probably blowing our own trumpet a bit, but we called ourselves like the 9 old men of CG because we were like literally just pioneering how to make movies in there and developing things like blend shapes for like facial expressions and stuff like that. It really was exciting time for me at Disney being, we were kind of the rebels. There was one time, I can't remember which movie I was working on at the time. There was one time that we went through the 2D department. They had the ground floor, and they had a computer pinata, and they were passionately destroying it. And all I could see is like me in place of that computer pinata, and they hated us CG guys for a while. just because they knew they could see the future.
Mm-hmm.
They hated us. And it's not like I played a part in it. I was a 2D guy that's learned the 3D. So I was like, I'm not one of you guys. No, you're a CG guy. Okay. But it was a difficult transition for Disney, and a lot of politics started then, and that's why I left Disney ultimately, is because of the politics. And politics in the studio can cloud your artistic, muscle. And, at the end of when it was due in Bolt, and I was like, at the end of this, I got to get out, because Lasseter came in. Lasseter didn't know who did what, so everyone was like, "Look at me, I'm the best, I'm the best." Now look here, look at me. I don't want to play that game. I've never been a politics person. I just want to do art. I just want to create stuff. I'm a creative person.
You guys can do a lot more together than look at me.
It was horrible. So I got to the end of Bolt. I finished. I've never broken a contract, but as soon as I was gone, as soon as the movie ended, I was out.
When was this? What year?
This was 2009.
Okay, so this is before George sold Star Wars, then, before Lucasfilm was acquired.
Yeah. This is way back. I left animation at that same time. I did have an animation job briefly at Sony. I worked on this movie called G-Force with these guinea pig characters in commando suits. They never gave me a credit though. Sony. Terrible. Sony are terrible for giving credits, and I will say that live.
There you go. You heard it here.
And so I did do one more animated project, but then I went on into previs, and it turned out that my assistant on Dinosaur and Treasure Planet, the guy that I trained up, had started his own previs company. And so in walks my friend Chris. I'm like, "Oh, where have you been?" I haven't seen him for years. He tells me about this thing called previs. I didn't know what previs was. He said, pre-visualization. It's basically planning out sequences for final, animation or effects. Okay, that sounds interesting. And so I started in previs, and I've been in it ever since. It's a transition from working on single shots, which I consider trees, to now I work on the forest. Now I look at the forest and make sure the forest is working.
Right.
And someone else can go in and do the individual trees. But it's a wider scope. It's cinematography, basically. Previs is basically cinematography. Designing not just individual shots, but designing how those shots cut together to make them flow filmatically and have a filmatic language.
Very cool. So I assume you've seen all the sequel movies?
Yeah.
How did you feel when you came out of The Force Awakens?
Okay. I've always really wanted to. I didn't want to be one of those guys that, oh, you just love the original trilogy. Like, oh, of course you're going to hate everything because you're one of these guys that went to see the movies, blah, 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 and nostalgia, whatever. I didn't want to be that guy. I really wanted to enjoy something. And it's not that I hated everything, or I didn't enjoy the prequels. The prequels started it for me.
Okay. I didn't get a chance to ask you about the prequels. So if you want to touch on the prequels for a minute,
I didn't enjoy them.
How did you feel? You didn't care for them?
I wanted to care for them more than I was trying to convince myself to care on the prequels. I wanted to love what George was doing. And I couldn't quite bring myself to put them on the same plane as the original trilogy. And then when he's making the sequels, I thought J.J. Abrams was smart in that he was using New Hope as a template. Basically, it was New Hope in new packaging. I thought that's smart. He's got to do that for Empire, though. That's going to be if he can pull off another one, then I'm going to accept this. And Empire wasn't there for me. So I really wanted to like the sequels. But again, I thought, I'm just going to be classed as one of those guys that hates everything. But I don't. I loved, maybe you don't, but I loved Solo Movie.
I don't care for it, but yeah.
I just thought, for me, it felt more like I understand. I saw a thing where Ron Howard was talking about trying to emulate the pace and the shot lengths of 70s style movie making, which is much more leisurely. It hold on shots longer, not so quick MTV cutting. And when I saw Solo Movie, the first time I saw it, I didn't like it. The second time, I liked it. The third time, I was like, this is the closest thing to a start the original series.
So you like it more than Rogue One?
I did. Okay. I did like Rogue One because the biggest mistake that Force Awakens made for me, if they had just kept the stormtroopers the same, it would have been way more accepted. They made like the iPhone version of the stormtrooper, and I was like, no, just so when Rogue One came out, I was like, thank God we've got stormtroopers again. So I loved Rogue One for that, but I loved Solo Movie as well, and I love the Mandalorian series. I think anything that is used in the same visual works for me. Like, as soon as you start departing from it and going these new troopers, it lost me. But keeping anything to do with this timeline, closest timeline, seems to work for me. If you go too much before it, you go too much after it, if it's in the sweet spot, the Goldilocks spot. So I was just relieved that I did love something that wasn't the original trilogy. I did love Rogue One. I did love Solo Movie, and I do love the Mandalorian series. So I'm not one of those guys that hates everything that came after. There's reasons why I don't like the new sequels. There's reasons why I don't like prequels, and I'm glad that I can look at it now and see it in context, because for the longest time I just thought anything that they produce I'm just going to reject. But that's not the case.
So what, in your opinion then, do you hold the sequels and the prequels the same, or do you distinguish the prequels from the sequels? Or
the prequels have grown on me as years have gone by. But I can watch them and it doesn't quite irk me as much. But I think George's mistake to push the CGE as far as he did and leave the practical was a big blunder in the prequels. If they had more practical in the prequels, I'm sure it would have been a better movie. Plus, I think the casting for me, when I was thinking about young Darth Vader, I imagined like the kid from the Omen movies, like dark, like not necessarily dark complexion or hair, just dark presence,
right?
Dark, brooding, like handsome kid, but there's something dark. It's something, just the eyes, just seem like there's something behind their face. Just like, I mean, I would have. There's a Netflix series out right now called Sinner with Bill Pullman. I'm on season 2, and there's a kid in there, and I was like, that kid would have been great as young Anakin. He's just a dark, brooding kid that you can see there's like something not quite maybe it's the acting ability of the child. I think it's just miscast. I think if they cast Annie, Shawnee to Annie, making it all cute, I don't know, that was a mistake as well. To conduct young Anakin, this is kind of like tortured kid. You know, I think it would have been a different. And when I saw the movie, and I'd heard about Jar Jar Binks before I saw the movie. We're working at Disney. A whole bunch of us left Ireland. We went to Disney. The guys that left, they convinced me to leave. So we're all in this little kind of a group in Los Angeles. One of us goes up to visit Marin County again, to visit our friends. Comes back, and he went to a whiteboard and he drew this duck-billed, long-eared thing with eye stalks and that, and I'm like, that's not a real thing. That must be a background character or something. That's no way that can be a lead character. And he goes, and he did the imitation of the voice. And I'm like, nah, you definitely must be pulling my leg. And then the second thing he drew was the what's his name now? The guy with the wings. The boss. Hey, Andy, my friend.
Oh, Watto.
Watto. He drew Watto. And I'm like, again, I was like, that is the ugliest, stupidest thing. And he goes, you should see it flying. I said, how can it fly with those little wings? Oh, yeah, it's hovering, like, magically in the air. And he did the voice again. I'm like, really? It can't be the real voice. And so I thought he was winding up. And this is when, I heard about the Greedo thing. I thought, you are full of crap. There's no way. It can't be. It can't be. And then one of the first trailers they had Jar Jar in, they showed that bit where they meet in the beginning, Qui-Gon and
where he runs into him.
Yeah, and they showed it as a little clip as a teaser, and I'm like, this is terrible. This is so terrible. I've never been a Jar Jar fan. I'm sorry for all the Jar Jar fans out there, and good luck to you. If you love Jar Jar like I love Boba Fett, it's all you. Me personally, I do not like the voice. I don't like the design. I didn't like it before I even see the movie. And when I saw the movie, I didn't like it even more. And then he kept being in the movie. It's like he was in the following one. Like, why is he still in? They kind of got less of him on the third one, but still, I thought, I don't know. I just couldn't. I couldn't fall in love with all the characters. Every character in the original trilogy, I fell in love with.
No, I can agree with that. Yeah,
I haven't got a character I dislike. Gonk Droid, love the Gonk Droid. every ship, I love every ship. I didn't understand why in the prequels everything seemed. I was expecting to see brand new X-wings. Like these were like the old X-wing starfighters that the Rebel had been collected together because they're discontinued and they're old, and they're still great. They're like Spitfires, but they're old. And I expect to see new ones or the one that
the predecessor,
yeah.
Right?
But it'll be more clunky than not these great streamlined ships and everything kind of like looking advanced from the galaxy I just was in, and so Doug Chang, I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like this isn't Star Wars. This is like Flash Gordon. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not winning any fans by saying this, but I really thought they made a blunder in what they could have done. There's so much potential for some great stuff, and I'd love to see a dark brooding kid that evolved into Darth. But I think Hayden Christensen was miscast. It should again be a very dark presence, a tormented soul. So you kind of felt sorry for him. You saw the torment, you felt sorry for him. That was the kind of prequels I was hoping for, and it just didn't deliver.
I think most people would agree with you. A few things I'll mention. Remember that era was High Republic, so everything was prosperity and wealth, and that's why you have everything shiny and grandiose, and then everything falls because of the oppression, so everything's clunky and put together. But I know what you're saying, absolutely.
But if they had just put one ship that you recognized
Yeah. Well, the Falcon's in there. There's a few little hidden things. Slave One. Slave One's there.
No, I'm talking about the first movie, Phantom Menace.
Okay, well, yeah, Phantom Menace. Yeah.
Phantom Menace. I mean, you got it. I'm not talking about Attack of the Clones. I think those kind of made up for some of the losses of Phantom Menace. But when I went to Phantom Menace, I lined up again. I lined up till midnight in Universal City Walk to see that movie, and I was just hoping to see one ship, but a brand new TIE fighter,
right? For the first iteration, right? Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
It's something, and for me, it just was a mistake not to have anything that you could identify. Oh, see where it's going. For me, anyway. And with Phantom Menace, everyone came out of the theater kind of. They looked like destroyed, like disappointment on everyone's face. And I thought, I want to love this. This is George's work. I want to love this. So I went to see it 5 times, thinking that, because when I first saw Casper, all I could see was my work. I couldn't see it as a movie. And so it took like 5 times to go and see it at the theater to suddenly see it as an audience. And it was helpful having an audience there to see what they responded to, you know. I thought the same thing is going to be true of Phantom Menace. I've seen it 5 times, and by that time, I'll embrace it. And I did. I went to see it 5 times and more, and
just didn't grab you.
It didn't have that. It didn't have anything like the grab that the originals had, and maybe because I was older, I don't know.
You saw this in California?
Yeah. I was working. I left Ireland for Disney, and I was working at Disney at the time when the prequels came out. So,
well, I can tell you from me, and I think most of my viewers, that we like the prequels. They're not the OT. You know, I can't speak for everyone, but I've said it in many of my streams. The crown jewel is the OT. It's not even a conversation. But I like the prequels for many reasons. Like the world building is much bigger. We get to see Boba, and the reason we have all the clones and all that type of thing. And we see Vader, you know, Anakin get chopped up and become Vader. But the main thing, what I was kind of getting at on like a big 20,000 foot view, is that the prequels at least are respectful. It's the Skywalker saga. It's one movie, right? 1 through 6. And then you see the sequels, and it's just this totally disconnected other world that not only is not connected, but it basically trashes all the old characters, breaks all the rules of the Force, and just goes off on something totally different. And those movies within themselves don't connect. Never mind connect with the entire overall scope of the thing. So that's the thing with the prequels, is that individually they're not great films, and I'm not saying that they're the best of Star Wars, but if you're going to watch it as a saga 1 through 6, they do what they're supposed to do. They tell you the story, they connect, they respect, they expand. So you know, that's the thing. As a saga, I think they're great.
No, I love the overall concept of the prequels. I love the idea that of the whole clone army being used to kind of like be put in place ready to turn, you know, onto the Jedi and surround them and just like envelop them. And how else are you going to deal with these Jedi? So I thought the concept was brilliant. I would have liked it more if it had been a lot darker with its treatment of, you know, young Darth Vader.
So the execution more so for you is not.
Yeah.
Most people say that. Yeah.
The Clone Wars, brilliant. You know, all the concepts in the prequels I love. It was just the execution of it. And like I said, it's not like it. I watch them now. I accept them a lot more now, and I enjoy them. And like I said, there's so much goodness, like Slave One kicking ass in the asteroid field.
Yes, sir.
Sonic charges and stuff like that. It's, all that, you know, gobble that up. There's just certain things where the CG was so obvious, I guess. Like I didn't like when Obi-Wan goes to the diner. If they'd just done that guy practical effects, it would have been a completely different interaction, feel, believability. You know,
True. Yeah.
His kind of like departure from practical in extreme. You know, it must have. I think it affects the actors as well, because I remember Julia Roberts when she did Tinkerbell and Hook, and she almost gave up acting after that because she hated not interacting with anyone but green screens for every shoot. And so, you know, when you see the behind the scenes from the prequels, it's just green screen everywhere. And so, as an actor, that must be like so frustrating and so disconnected, you know, rather than being in, you know, because like I said, I'm friends with all the original cast members. Like one of the last conventions I did before the lockdown was in Nashville with all the guys that were in the canteen. And I don't know, just their stories of what it was like to be on set just sounds amazing, and they got so much passion for those memories and for those experiences. And I think J.J. Abrams did a smart thing in resurrecting the practical for Force Awakens. I think that was a plus, huge plus over the prequels for me. The fact he'd returned to practicality, and you know, so there was I don't know, it just felt more like Star Wars to me visually when Force Awakens came out, for that reason, for the lack of much less used CG.
Yeah. No, I totally understand you. I mean, there's nothing like the original puppet Yoda from Empire, you know, of course.
But
no, go ahead.
But I felt like, you know, that springboard for Force Awakens, they could have springboarded it into something really good. But when I saw the second one, the Last Jedi, I don't know, I was just lost. I was like, I didn't even like Luke. I was like, what's wrong? Why am I not loving Luke? You know, why is he this whiny old? And half the movie was like, come on, Luke, do something. And
well, you can't love him because that's not Luke.
Yeah, when he comes out, you know, against the walkers, and I was like, oh, this is what I wanted to see, and then he disappears. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Not. That's when it kind of lost me, was because I was ready to accept whatever they dished up after Force Awakens. I thought, okay, I'm not loving everything. My stormtroopers aren't there. Big mistake, but I'll go with it. But the second movie,
see where it goes, right?
Yeah, and then the third movie I just saw just to see it, you know. But again, it was just like hats off to J.J. Abrams for trying to cram everything on and trying to tie up all his loose ends. He did a wonderful job trying to correct some stuff, but he shouldn't have handed it off. He should have.
No, that was a big mistake.
He shouldn't have handed it off. He should have. If he handed it off, it should have been to like Spielberg or Ron Howard or someone that would have. I don't know.
Stuck to it.
Delivered something a bit better.
Yeah, no, and again, those three movies don't have any consistency or continuity with themselves. They're all over the place. Yeah. And then by the time the third one, Rise of Skywalker, it's trying to correct everything that it did. It's so fast and it's such a mess. It's a course correction. It all falls apart. You know, and it's a shame because 7, 8, and 9 should have been this grandiose, beautiful thing, and it's just all over the place.
Yeah, I think the mistake on both of those trilogies was they tried to go too epic. Like, no one wanted epic. We wanted just more of the same. Like, we don't want more than what the original trilogy was. We want a continuation of.
Right.
I think both of them, like I remember when George was talking about the prequels being this, epic. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And it's like he's trying to make it a much bigger thing than it needed to be. It would have been much more intimate story if it just followed Anakin into his journey,
Well, it's like I always say, at the end of the day, we all have our own vision of Star Wars and the things we would have liked and how we perceived it was going to happen. And we have to, at the end of the day, respect George. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I don't agree with everything. I'm not saying that I love every little thing he did, but at the end of the day, that's his story, and it's cohesive and beautiful, and I love it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it is what it is. At least in the Lucas era, everything fit and made sense, and you could see the love. In the Disney era, it's very manufactured, very put out quickly, and just get it made and just make money, and it's just a totally different feeling and respect. Jake Skywalker was one of the two huge mistakes. Jake Skywalker, because that's not Luke. We know what Luke is. And second, you don't have Han, Luke, and Leia on screen together. I mean, that's the biggest travesty in all of cinematic history. You had 3 of them, and you don't even have a 2-minute scene with them together.
Yeah.
And you should have had Lando and Chewie and R2, but I mean, Han, Luke, and Leia. It didn't occur to you guys to have them on screen together.
Yeah.
It just shows how Disney's just not doesn't understand the property.
Yeah. Disney is they're looking at dollars first.
That's the thing.
And then they're looking at the franchise.
Yeah. So, and that's a shame, because if you would have properly treated the franchise, the dollars would have come.
Yeah.
Tenfold.
Yeah. Well, when I was working at Disney, we were looking at this is just after Incredibles. So they screened Incredibles with the sound down in the theater, and all the supervisors, I can't remember which we were working on, but we were working in there, watching the movie, and everyone was free to say anything they wanted. And my biggest point was that Disney didn't want to offend anybody. So they had these rules: no gunplay, no smoking, no huge rules like this. And we watched The Incredibles, and it starts off with gunplay, with a big shooting around, and the woman's going to get a cat out of the tree, and there's cops and chasing guys and firing guns, and Edna Mode smoking with a cigarette holder and stuff. And I said, okay, I understand Disney don't want to offend anybody. I said, but this is a mistake. Like, nobody dislikes water, drinking water. But who loves drinking water? So I understand not wanting to offend anybody, but then you've got no audience.
Right.
I'd rather say, okay, this is not for you guys, but this is for you guys.
Right.
But you're so worried about not offending people that it's clouding your filmmaking abilities. And my other point to them was, I was like, all you need to do is make a movie with animals in. Like, we're making Pocahontas, we're making Hunchback, we're making Tarzan, we're making Atlantis. It's all like human beings. We get that for free. You can take any of these classic stories, like Robin Hood did, and substitute animals for character traits. You'd make millions, and no one listened. And it wasn't until, I think, like Zootopia, where it was called Zootopia in Europe or here, I can't remember.
I think it might have been here too.
It's called something different in Europe to here. Anyway.
Okay.
It's Zootopia here. It was called something else there.
I'm not sure.
But suddenly they make tons of money. They're like, yeah, because you're using animals again. Like, you just need, with animation, you can do the impossible, like make animals talk, But humans talking, you could shoot a live action. You could have a live action Pocahontas.
Madagascar?
That was in Disney.
Okay, I'm trying to think of which one was Zootopia. It doesn't matter, but just trying to think.
I don't know. For a while after leaving Disney, I couldn't. I had such a bad taste in my mouth. I couldn't even watch Disney movies for a while. So, my kids would watch them. They'd watch them, and I'd watch something else. Don't know. I just couldn't. I had a bad taste in my mouth for a while after Disney. They managed to kill that animation heart for a while.
They tend to do that. When I interviewed Jonathan Rinsler, he said something in the same vein that Lucasfilm was different. They didn't treat people the same. There wasn't the same type of camaraderie and love and level of freedom to create. And he specifically said that if George Lucas still owned Lucasfilm, he would still be there. But he left because, it was a different type of Lucasfilm. And this is someone that was there, for many, many years. Well, he was there. He came like right when Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones was wrapping. So, what are we talking about? 2001-ish. He came to Lucasfilm, and he was, he worked very closely with George day to day, did all the behind the scenes books and all that stuff. And he definitely said, if it was still George Lucas, he would be there today, but that it had changed drastically.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say the same thing, that they just don't appreciate people, and they have crazy politics and all these types of things. And
you considered. I felt experience equated to expensive for them, and so there was one time when at the time I left, they were at the point where they were slashing everyone's wages 40%, 60%. Sorry,
wow,
you had 40% what you had before, and I'm like, why? What have I done wrong? And then that's not just you, everyone. Like, I don't know. It was just when you saw that the dollar was worth more to them than the quality of the work that they could output. There were someone bean counter was looking at me saying, "Oh, this guy's a bit expensive. You sure he's worth the money?"
Yeah, and that's a shame, because you get those types of people involved, and they start making cuts. But you have to find a balance. I mean, sometimes you have to, reduce things, but you also have to understand that if you put the time, the love, the quality, then the money's going to come. It's going to come. So, but they've lost, a lot of sight of that. So what's going on with Netflix? You mentioned that you're at Netflix now. When did that happen? Can you tell us anything that you're working on? What's going on over there? Anything what you're doing?
I left. I was working at MPC, Motion Picture Company, Moving Picture Company, and I loved it. But I got offered a job at Netflix, and it was going back to feature animation again, and it was doing, like I said, cinematography or layout for this movie called Back to the Outback. So Back to the Outback is currently in final animation. Everything, all the planning, all my job wrapped in December. I can tell you about that because they announced they were making the movie. But the movie I'm working on right now hasn't been announced, so I can't say. But I could probably tell you it's an anime movie, which I've never worked on. So
very cool.
Anime style it's one of the things that I always wanted to work on. If you see my IMDb, it's pretty diverse.
Yes.
I've never worked on an alien movie, which I'd love to work on an alien movie one time. And I've always wanted to work on an anime. So I'm working on an anime style movie, but I can't tell you anymore.
Okay. Can you mention, are you actually animating? Are you supervising? Can you mention anything like that? Or?
Well, what we do is not classed as animation, but I mean, there's not much left to the imagination. You have to animate your characters to be able to inform your camera. So, you're tasked with providing the cameras for the movie and blocking out the animation, but you have to take it to a point where you're informing the camera to be able to know what to do with the camera. So, even I was showing my wife my latest sequence I've been working on, and it just looks like it's a finished thing. It really doesn't look like there's much animation to be added to it, apart from effects or where a foot is going through the floor or something. So even though I'm not supposedly animating, I really am. I don't know. I love the process of making films. I have more of a passion for film language and the way a film flows than I do for animation anymore. Animation, my passion back in the day was just making a character alive. If people could watch my character and think, that character exists somehow, people, Foxy Loxy, some people are passionate about this character. And it's so funny that it's something that you created from a couple of sketches that look like the original sketches of Foxy Loxy look like a pig/hamster character. I took it home to my daughter and said, "What is this character?" She said, "A pig, hamster, a fox." Oh. So I went to Disney. I said, "Can I redesign this character? Because it doesn't. It has to register. A fox has pointed nose, pointed ears, big fluffy tail. That's what fox. Orange color. For me, that's a fox."
Yeah, of course.
And
fluffy tail, long fluffy tail.
Yeah. So back in the day, my passion was more about bringing characters to life, and the payback was people falling in love with those characters, and it still is. It's amazing how many people are passionate about Casper. I would never have guessed back in the day. But now my passion is a larger. Now I'm into thinking about the structure of movies or sequences within movies. And, it's like I said, it's more about the forest than the trees now. So even though I'm animating a lot, my passion is shifted a bit. It's more on the structure of a movie that draws you in. I see things on TV and I would have done it differently to that. Or there was something. There's something either in the sequels. I don't know. It was the sequels, not the prequels. And I thought I would have filmed it completely differently to that, and for a much bigger payoff. But that's like I said, it's the curse of working on movies. Suddenly can't see movies for as you used to.
Right. Can you give us any hint? Your anime, is that this year, 2023? Can you give us any?
My contract ends. I've got 18 months on this, so it'll be 18 months doing what I do, which is the front end. And so it's usually a year after that. So I think it's going to be earliest 22 that this film releases. But the reason I love Netflix is because Netflix have the opposite of everything I just said about Disney. Like they are more passionate about what quality is than the dollar amount investing in it. Not to say that they don't think about that at all.
Of course, yeah.
They understand that the popularity will follow if you follow your passion.
Right.
It might cost a week's more work than the other route. So,
have you seen Cobra Kai?
Yeah.
Okay, so people often ask me if someone could get Lucasfilm. First of all, obviously George would get him back, but I always say Netflix, because if Star Wars was made the way that the people that did Cobra Kai was made, wow, would everybody be so in love because they paid proper respect and maintain the characters in the story and all of that. You feel like you're back in that, not that you go back to the 80s, but it feels natural, like these people have naturally evolved to who they are today. And I always use that example that Cobra Kai is exactly what Disney should have done with Star Wars, and that's where they messed up. So it's funny because you're talking about this, and it's this. A lot of us see the same thing. We feel the same way that they understand that if you give the fans what they want, the money will come, as opposed to you trying to tell us what we want.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have a huge respect for Jon Favreau. I think Jon Favreau did the right thing with The Mandalorian. I think he's taken it in the right direction. And I first worked with John on Jungle Book. And sometimes the director can be very distant.
Standoffish.
Yeah. And all the good directors I found are the ones that can treat you like a human being and drop that whole distance thing and embrace you. And so one of the first meetings with John, came up, grabbed my hand, shook it. And when they left, I had a coin in it. It's called a challenge coin. It was something they do in the military, apparently. It's to raise morale. There's a big coin, big heavy thing with a Jungle Book on it. And he was like, okay, I want to stop what everyone's working on because we're losing the characters. Let's go back to talk about what character, each of the characters and what they are investing in this movie. So everything stopped on the previous, and we all sat down, and it was like really eye-opening to see that he was ready to say, no, hold on, Disney. We'll get to that. We've got to do this first. And I think that he's taken that approach with The Mandalorian. I feel like it's very character-based, I think that for me, Mandalorian is kind of the Cobra Kai, like you were saying about when you talk about Cobra Kai and everything. It's done well. I think that Jon Favreau, it took someone like Jon Favreau to say, look, trust me, Disney, I know what I'm doing. If you didn't trust me in the past twice, let me just do it. And he and Dave kind of have come up with something that works. But do you feel the same way about Mandalorian? Do you love it?
Not really. I don't love it.
Oh.
One, because it breaks a lot of lore, and two, because there's a lot of production problems. And again, I have this curse, but if you really watch it, there's all kinds of mistakes, man. It's many problems.
Yeah,
and it's like for Disney 2021, this budget, they really need someone to be watching and being like, guys, you missed this, you missed that. You know about the jeans and the watch guy in the background?
Yeah. But I'm not saying that it's the best, but like my biggest gripe was is the episode where they land on it was the second episode in season 2. And he's flying along and he has the X-Wings from this side and the chit-chat. It was the most boring. It was like 3 camera shots. It was like camera shot this way and X-Wing, sticking out camera this way. Exactly the same, but mirror X-Wing this way. Just filmatically, it was kind of it was breaking a lot of rules. You don't want to do symmetry. You don't want to have symmetry between.
There's a lot of things that they do in it that I see it and I'm like, oh man, why? I don't hate it, but here's another thing. All of that stuff, the show, the concept, the weapon, the story, it's all Boba Fett. It was from his suit, the Boba Fett. I don't know if you know the 1313 game that was being developed. That's literally Mandalorian's suit. Underworld that was coming. That's where Mandalorian comes from. So it's like they did all this stuff to parallel and mirror Boba Fett, and they didn't just do Boba Fett. So then now here we are in season 2, and guess what? Now they brought Boba back, and we're going to have a Boba show. So to me, it's like you should have just respected Boba from the beginning, done it properly, not a babysitter, but a bounty hunter, and let's do it. And instead it turned into this whole, the show is nothing to do with Din Djarin. It's all about Baby Yoda and then Bo-Katan and Cara Dune and all these people. And I like all those characters, but it's like you've gone from what the show is supposed to be, The Mandalorian, and it's about everyone and everything else. So it's not that I hate it. It's not that I don't see what John is trying to do and the good in it. But it's like, when you know Star Wars so well, and you know it's all Boba Fett anyways, well, why are we wasting time? Why didn't you just do a proper Boba Fett and let's get to it? Let's give the people what they want and let's do it right. Instead of like, member berries and nostalgia and did you see that? And did you see that? But the story's all over the place and it's about babysitting and there's just so many things that irk me. Now, if I just watch it and have fun, sure, it's okay, it's fun. I'm not saying that it, burn it. But it's not what it should be. It's not the level that it can.
It's not TV. This is Star Wars TV for me. Like it's not the original trilogy. That's Star Wars film. But for Star Wars TV, I eat this stuff up. But I remember I was at the London Film and Comic Con in 2017, and it was the last time I was actually with Jeremy and Alan Harris, actually. And there was Jeremy, myself, Alan Harris, and Dickie Beer on the stage. And we were answering questions. And the question came up, what do you feel about the idea, the rumors of this spin-off movie? And Jeremy handed me the microphone. He goes, this is more a question for you. Is it? Okay. Okay. I said, I'm worried. I'm worried that they're not going to do it right, because I'm worried that they're going to take Boba Fett and he's going to be chat, or this, that, and the other, just something that breaks the rules, and I'd rather they not go there. So when they said they were going to do another different Mandalorian, I was personally relieved.
A little bit relieved, yeah. No, I can understand that.
I was relieved that they were at least testing the water with a different Mandalorian. Like, this is what the Mandalorians are about. Because there's a whole question of if he is a Mandalorian. So I thought, I'm glad that they're testing the water and they're not chucking Boba Fett in there. And actually, I kind of like the way they reintroduced him in the second season, introduced Boba Fett into it. But I was worried about any kind of movie spin-off or TV series that was Boba Fett centric, because I thought that he's so much inside of his head, and not much comes out, that I couldn't see them doing it justice. And so I'm kind of glad that they've reintroduced Boba Fett. And personally, I was always wanting to see why the Mandalorians had the reputation they had. So the episode where they show the prison break from the prison ship, when you got to see, there's, what's his name?
Din Djarin, or
no? Well, Meeks.
I'm not sure who.
Bill
Burr.
Yeah. And he said, oh, what's it about making fun and saying all the stuff that I've heard over the years, make fun of my obsession with Mandalorians. And then for him to kind of show his stuff and show him, turning the tables on them, and it goes from being locked up to locking them up. That stuff was a big payoff for me. That was like everything I wanted to see in Jedi that didn't. And it just took decades before I did get to see some of that. So I love that side of it. I love that he at least showed the coolness to everyone else that I had already known Boba Fett cool, but he actually showed it visually,
right. Well, and it's funny because I never thought about. I did think of it like you did, relieved, like, okay, well, they screwed up Luke Skywalker, so please leave Boba Fett alone. But I guess I never really thought about it, and you make a good point. Maybe, I don't know if John had thought this far ahead, but maybe he's like, let's test the grounds with Mandalorian so that we can do Boba Fett correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. If that's the case, well, we'll see. I don't know that he thought that far ahead, but if he did, I'll give him the
I think he consciously, he and Dave thought it's a safer route going with a different Mandalorian, because you haven't got all that you're not going to be as scrutinized as much. You're not going to be criticized as much because everyone's going to say, we know what Boba Fett is, and that's not Boba Fett. So if you have a different Mandalorian, then you have a bit more free range to do what you want. And so I think that was his intent, was to avoid the sensitivity that comes with your treatment of Boba Fett. So I probably have to wrap in a short while.
Yeah, sure. No worry. Yeah, no, I was gonna say something here in a minute because we have been going for a while.
We could talk for a day on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll just mention one last thing. I think Boba Fett, they did pretty well in The Mandalorian. I only have one issue. That's him repainting his suit.
Boba
Fett would never do that, Dave and John. Not in a million years. That's his battle scars. That's his honor. Yeah. He would never.
I actually loved the suit when it was more beaten up from coming out of the Sarlacc. I loved that look. It was almost like silver.
Yeah.
And it was like even better than it was.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it being mixed with his other armor, like all the stuff the robes he had on. I bought all of that. And when I saw it repainted, I was like a bit disappointed. In that, I thought, well, why would he? Okay, maybe he's doing it while he's talking to Cara Dune. Maybe he's like bored. I don't know. It was a stretch. The only thing that validated it for me was I thought that, okay, well, maybe he's painted it because he's going into the finale. I thought he'd play a much bigger part in the finale. And in the finale, he'd play a much bigger part. He'd get it kind of beaten up, so you start seeing that old suit again a bit. Maybe a dent in the helmet somewhere, scratches or something. Like, oh, I see it coming back. So I'm hoping that they bring it back throughout the course of the Book of Boba Fett, that it doesn't take too long before it starts to look like the wear and tear of a working suit. That's what I loved about Boba Fett. It looked like he used it for work. It was like my old work clothes, they're not.
Well, and that was part of the mystique, is he didn't have to tell you. You saw, like, you don't mess with this guy. I mean, it's obvious. You saw his suit, his helmet, and not only did they paint him, but they went so far as to paint in the dents, and it's like, no, us Boba Fett fans, a dented helmet, and it's like, what are you doing? But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Again, I want to respect your time, so let's wrap up. But let's do something. I hope you had a great time, like I did. This was so much fun. Let's do something. Let's make a little plan.
Okay.
After the Book of Boba Fett, let's meet back up. Let's have another chat, and let's see how we compare and feel about the Book of Boba Fett and all that, because we're not going to get the Mandalorian again until 22 or 23. But at like early 22, right? Because it comes out December of 21. Let's meet up and we'll have a little Book of Boba Fett and see how we feel, after all this, and then his own show and what they do. I think that'll be a lot of fun. So if you're up for it, I would love to do that. January, February of 22, we'll try to meet up. Is there anything that you want to promote, that you want to mention? Anything? Yeah.
I just want to promote my YouTube channel because it's the same at ANHSE. There's just so much goodies on there. Just nobody goes there, and it's so much to look. You can even see my whole shoot, the blue screen shoot, or the footage I managed to salvage from. There was a guy with a camera on the set, and I got this found footage. I got the found footage, and it was all kind of sepia, kind of colored it. And they sped it all up, so I had to stretch it out to be normal speed again. But all that stuff's on my Boba Fett NHE and ANHSE.
I'll put the link. That's one I didn't put, but I'll put the link for it.
Yeah,
I have your other stuff. So in the description, the link will be there, guys, so you can easily find it. I'll put it in when we finish up. Anything else you want to mention or promote or anything? Or okay.
Find me on Twitter or Facebook. I'm everywhere.
Okay, great. Mark, thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure. As a Boba Fett guy. This is the closest I've gotten to the inside of Boba Fett. So thank you so much. And just in general, it's been a great time. I really appreciate it. You are always welcome here. If you ever need to talk or you want to promote something or please, anytime. But let's do that when Book of Boba Fett wraps up. Let's do our own take on it, our synopsis, and we'll see. We'll see what we feel about it as two old Boba Fett guys. So that'll be a lot of fun. So everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys had a great time. Do me a favor, guys. Put a BFF in the chat so for Mark and myself, and that's for my best friend forever, Boba fucking Fett. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mark. I look forward to it in the future. And again, you have a friend here. Anything you need, just give me a shout. Okay. Guys, thank you so much. I will play a short outro clip that's like 30 seconds, and then the stream will end, Mark, and I'll see you in the back end and we can wrap up. But anyways, thank you so much, guys. May the force be with you. I hope you had a great time. And I will see you guys very soon. Tomorrow I have a stream for the Bob Chapek answer question thing. So we'll see what he has to talk about. So that's around 6:45 p.m. Eastern. If you guys want to join me, I'll be doing a stream tomorrow evening, and we'll have a chat about my time here with Mark as well. So, Mark, thank you again. Bless you. And, Boba Fett forever. And I will leave you guys with the short outro, and I will see you soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Also to I'm getting very close to 11,000 subscribers. So thank you so much, everyone, for the support. Love you guys. I will see you soon. May the force be with you. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the video. May the force be with you.